Hello there, and today we're continuing onwards with our Lyric 101 writing series, and in this episode we're all about the storyline and the narrative. Let's get into it. Tribe of Names, Simon speaking. Welcome back to the channel. I'm a professional musician who has spent the past 30 to 35 years working in and sometimes around the recording music industry, writing and performing. On this channel we provide tips and tricks for the aspiring musician and songwriter in you. So when it comes to writing lyrics which make up a story or a narrative, I think we've all been there at some point in our life where we've started out writing about rainy days or lost loves. But if you harbour any desire to pursue songwriting at a more intense and sustained level, it soon becomes obvious that you need to develop your narrative game. Now, if you're an instrumental artist, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're off the hook when it comes to crafting a narrative for your song. It just means that you don't have to pursue it through the idea of words. But meaning is meaning. And when it comes to lyrics, you really have to find some kind of voice to put your message out there, be it fantasy or from experience. Storytelling lives at the very heart of all of us, and especially when it comes to art. And if you want to tell your story, you need to develop the skills that will allow you to hook people in at the start, develop your tale, and then end up at some kind of conclusion which both you and the listener find satisfying or in some way fulfilling. Now, there are a myriad of techniques out there to allow you to achieve your narrative aims. Some can be quite nebulous. For example, I suspect everybody has a personal opinion about what Bohemian Rhapsody means, and only Freddie would be able to tell you what it was, God bless his soul. Other artists prefer a more direct route to both your intellect and your heartstrings when they're crafting their narrative. Musicians like Phil Collins spring most readily to my mind when it comes to that form of lyric writing. But whichever way you want to enter your story, you've just got to make sure that it's the one that's right for you and you're not just pursuing something which you believe will be a successful way to write lyrics. It has to be from your heart. I honestly don't think that you can be authentic and pass that authenticity off to your listener without truly understanding and believing in what you're writing about. So with all of that said, and hopefully still fresh in your mind, I'd like to introduce you now to a gentleman called Tom Slatter, who has been a Bad Elephant Music label mate of mine for the past half decade. I find Tom's music to be brave, challenging, fiercely idiosyncratic, and while he has a lot of very dark themes and dissonant structures when it comes to his narrative, I personally think it's an incredibly satisfying music form which he's landed upon. So with all that being said, here's my interview with BEM label mate Tom Slatter. Hi there, this is Simon here, and as I said before, I'm a very, very fortunate individual in the fact that I've actually managed to capture one of my favourite artists and lyricists, certainly when it comes to working with a fellow label mate on Bad Elephant Music. So will you welcome, please, Mr. Tom Slatter.
Thanks, Simon. I mean, just to make clear for viewers, I'm not captive here, and I have been told I will be allowed to leave when I fulfil my obligations.
Well, seriously, when it comes to lyric writing, first of all, before we get really stuck into the nitty-gritty, give us a little bit of background information about yourself. I most keenly, in fact, actually, this is something which I don't know about, which is how did you actually get into songwriting and specifically lyric writing in the first place?
I'm not sure there was a time in my life when I didn't make music. My mum's a music teacher. She was a primary school music teacher. So it's a musical family. So I've always done that. And then in general, if I like something, I want to have a go at it. So I think pretty much as soon as I was making music, I was having a go at writing it myself. And then, you know, when I was a kid, I wanted to be I wanted to be Eddie Vedder, or I wanted to be Tom York, or I wanted to be James Hetfield out of Metallica. So, I tried to be those people, and they all write their own songs, don't they? So I had to have a go at that. So that's where it started. So yeah, I mean, I was definitely writing, having a go at writing songs. I remember I borrowed off my music department of my school. They had a broken down, beaten old Tascam 4-track recorder. So borrowed that off the school and sort of started there and persuaded my parents to get me one. And haven't looked back, haven't stopped since.
So you've now been on the Bad Elephant label for about 5 or 6 years now. Is that right?
It feels considerably longer than that. At least 3 centuries. I was having a chat with David, who runs the label, the other day. I've got a new album that'll happen sort of in summer this year, and when that's out, the majority of my solo albums will have been Bad Elephant releases. 4 out of 7 would have been BEM releases. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's nice to feature another long-term inmate of the BEM label. And speaking as one old lag to another, if I could actually sort of turn to the sort of like the lyric writing, this is one of the things which I think separates you from a huge number of yours and my contemporaries, in the fact that you have taken a very different, in my opinion, and quite dark route through lyrical narrative. Could you just give me a little bit of background as to sort of how you arrived at the kind of writing style which you've now adopted? I mean, was there anything that specifically interests you or comes back as a regular theme?
A regular theme? Death. Death and murder. Over and over again, death and murder. Which I think is Kylie Minogue's fault.
Oh yes, because didn't she do murder ballads with Nick Cave at some point?
She did one.
She did one.
She did. I can't remember the name of the song. Where the Wild Roses Grow. And I don't know if that is the first song where I thought this is just about someone being killed and nothing else. But it's the one that sticks in my mind, which is weird because I'm a heavy metal fan. So I've I would have listened to a huge amount of songs that are about that sort of topic before that, 'cause that's a mid-90s song, I think.
Yeah,
maybe late 90s. But that's the one that was like that without having the sort of the big histrionics of heavy metal. Because I think there's a lot of heavy metal in my lyric writing in the way there kind of isn't in the in what you can hear. I'm not a heavy metal artist, but if you look at the lyrics, there's a lot of similar themes. So definitely Kylie Minogue and Nick Cave with that stuff. But also, I mean, it's nice of you to say it sounds like I've got my own voice. From my point of view, almost every song I can tell you where it's been ripped off from. Almost every song there's a mixture of Jim Steinman, who only just passed away.
yeah, sad loss.
That one. So there's loads of Jim Steinman in my songs. There's loads of Iron Maiden lyrically, if not musically. There's loads of David Bowie, particularly in terms of technique and approach. So those, and quite a lot of Radiohead as well, actually. Quite a lot of Tom York. So as far as I'm concerned, I wear my influences very clearly on my sleeve. But I think it's unusual enough of a mix and disguised well enough that I can fool a lot of people into thinking that I've got my own voice and that I'm original.
Well, when it comes to storytelling, is that an essential element of any lyric you write, or is it a case of you can fall into a narrative as you're starting to sort of like try out lines or rhyming couplets or even themes?
Almost regardless of sort of how I approach a song, I don't think I've ever thought I've got a song idea here, except when that's gone along with I know who's singing this song. I mean, obviously, I'm the singer, I'm a singer-songwriter, it's me, but I know the character. I know whose voice this song is. I know the situation they're in, the story they're going to tell. I mentioned Eddie Vedder earlier. So I don't think people think of Pearl Jam as being a sort of storytelling folk band, but lyrically, particularly on that big hit album 10, every single song is from the point of view of a character who is not Eddie Vedder. There's even the big hit Alive is the first song in a series, and like the next song in the story is the first song on that album once. So like, which is, that grunge was when I was a teenager, so I loved that stuff. And this singer who I wanted to be, he wasn't singing about himself. He was singing story songs. And I've definitely ended up copying that. I haven't got a song until I've worked out, this is the voice.
So when it comes to crafting a narrative, you have a character which you can positively place inside the story. I know from a lot of your lyrics that there tends to be a lot of, shall we say, weird happenings that go on inside of your music. There seems to be, for me, always an element of either someone under extreme duress or someone under someone placed in some kind of situation where they're having to escape. And I was curious to know as to whether or not when you actually find a character, are you pretty much making it up as you go along to a conclusion, or are you just trying to sit the character in a situation and round out that situation?
I've got a song about a man who's replaced all his body parts with mechanical alternatives. I've got several songs about people who are going to sleep in weird places. So, body parts guy replaced all his body parts, doesn't need to feel anything anymore. All these people sort of going to sleep in a sci-fi stasis pod, or I kid you not, 2 songs about going to sleep in a ship trapped in Arctic ice that then gets taken off over the North Pole. So this another song about someone going to sleep in bins. So this recurring theme of putting up this weird or sci-fi barrier, so you don't need to deal with people anymore. They're all character songs, and narrative. They're not about me. There is no subtext.
Okay, fair enough.
People think about people being in sort of moments of duress. Like, that's what story is. That's what narrative is. There's no story in someone just having a boring average day in their life. Like, no one ever made the movie of that. The story is in at the moment of duress, usually the point where they've got to make a choice, which gives you a lovely narrative. They can make their choice in the middle eight. So and having a narrative is so useful for, you don't need to think, what's going to happen in verse 2? It's like, what's the next bit of the story? Life gets so much simpler if you're applying narratives to stories.
Well, actually, I was going to say, because that leads me on to something else, which I think we were discussing. You were talking about that more often than not, the lyrics are not where most of the meaning comes from. Are you talking about the fact that the lyrics are bound up in the music as well?
Yeah, they are. So lyrics aren't where most meaning comes from. I think this is true of any lyric anyway. And sometimes, if you read the stuff about songwriting on the internet, they might, or you watch the videos, they might concede that lyric writing is 50% of the songwriting. So it's really important. And I go further. Lyrics, about 20% of the job, I reckon, at most, if you're lucky. And I say that as a lyricist, and I say it because I'm going to have a completely different effect if I set the same lyrics to a different tune, give it a different arrangement, give it a different set of chords, give it a different singer. The obvious example, I think, is Iron Maiden's Fear of the Dark. You read the lyrics, it's about being scared of the dark. You watch a performance of that song, it is not about being scared of the dark. It's about what every Iron Maiden song is about. It's a football chant made into heavy metal form. It's about a stadium full of people singing together and having a laugh. The actual lyrics are not the main thing. Same with that Pearl Jam song I mentioned, Alive. Lyrically, that is really dark. It's the lyric line is "I'm still alive," and the way it's experienced, particularly in a concert, is this big, life-affirming "I'm still alive." Yeah. Actually, it's a cry of despair. It's like, I'm still alive. It's all I've got left. And that song is, there's that story is there's a dead dad. There's incest with the mother. It's proper Oedipal stuff. If you look at the lyrics written on paper.
Yeah, I was going to say that is a very interesting thing. Is that yes, there's a lot of context that has to be placed behind a lyric for it to be reinforced, and so many people can. In depending on the context, completely misinterpret it. I mean, you only have to look at how many people use "Every Breath You Take" by the Police as their first dance at a wedding to understand exactly how many people completely misinterpret the actual context of the song being written.
I mean, you're right that they're like literally that's not what the song is about. It's creepy, but if everyone is experiencing it as a nice romantic song, well, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so on paper, yeah, it's a bit creepy, but that's not the meaning they're taking. So who says? So I'm sure there isn't a right or wrong answer for any particular song. The point is, your lyrics alone are not gonna tell people. And if you're writing lyrics and you think, well, I want these words on their own to get things across to people, you're a poet, you're not a lyricist.
Yeah.
You're doing something different, something just as good and something just as valid. But if you want it to be lyrics, and if someone else is doing all the music, you're going to have to give up some of that, and you're going to have to give up a bit of control of the meaning, because other people are going to put their spin on it.
It so often is the case that that once you put a song out there, it can be completely transformed. It ceases in some ways to be yours, especially as a narrative as well. But one of the other things I wanted to talk about with regards to things which impact upon the narrative is the use of harmony as well. And I wanted to know what your thoughts are when it comes to matching up lyrics with harmonic content in the song.
I'm not a classical musician at all, but did go to uni, did study, and get into some of the less pleasant sounding end of classical music. And I've sort of slightly taken on that thing from classical music where everything is about what key are you in, what chords are going on, what's the harmony, which is not necessarily a popular music thing so much. So it really means something to me, and it's part of how I talk about things. So there are certain harmonic moods that I do associate with certain emotions that I'm trying to get across, and which is really important for your storytelling. So, for example, I did some guitar for one of your tracks on your Shineback album, and you told me I can't remember exactly the brief, but it was supposed to be a bit weird and a bit unusual. So to me, weird and unusual. Right, I'm going to play something in the whole tone scale. So whole tone scale, it's got that weird otherworldly thing because it never sounds like it's finished. It never sounds like it's got to the root note. Sometimes you need that. That song about the guy replacing all his body parts with mechanical alternatives, it's full of augmented chords and a bit of whole tone stuff because it's got this weird, unsettling vibe to it. Whereas, if I'm going to write something in a major key, it's almost always going to have that sharp fourth Lydian feel in it. Because to me, a normal major scale sounds a bit too twee and a bit too innocent. So I'm only using that scale if I want twee and I want innocent, which, I'm usually writing about murder, so I don't usually want something that sounds innocent. We mentioned Iron Maiden, so let's talk about them. Every Iron Maiden song in the last half of their career anyway is these big Aeolian mode, so big sort of natural minor. It's A minor F G, it's E minor C D, which sounds big, anthemic, and big and open and anthemic, but without the twee major key stuff. So I find having that library of all these different moods, you want these kind of moods, I'll use these kind of chords. Obviously, when I'm actually writing, it's not usually that thought out. You come to it a bit more instinctually, but that palette of colours. To be honest, at this point, I'm doing this for a couple of decades. The two things are the same. The mood is the mode for me.
Well, the other thing which leads on quite nicely from this is something which I'm endeavouring really to ask everybody that I speak to, especially if the artist involved has an equal hand in both the composition of the music and the lyrics, which is, do you tend to start with a narrative idea, or is it literally the lyrics are born out of the songs, the musical part of the song that you write?
I don't often have music first. So this new album that I'm working on, there's a very unusual situation where I had a song written. I knew what the vocal melodies were. It was well developed enough that I could send it off to other people to do their parts. So I had, the whole thing recorded before I knew what the, apart from the vocals, obviously, before I knew what the words were going to be. That I don't think has happened before. Also, this year for February album writing month, I'll say that again, for February album writing month, which I've been doing for about 13 years. Songwriting thing, you have to write a load of songs in the month of February. So for the first time for a very long time, I had a set of lyrics before I knew what the music was going to be, which almost never happens to me. It's usually they're the same thing. And I usually have a pretty clear distinction between ideas generation and writing the song. So that stage of let's come up with a load of ideas, and usually it'll be a snatch of vocal melody and some of the words that might go along with it.
That is a very interesting, and that's very interesting, and I just wanted people to note at home that it's not that I'm checking my emails as you talk. I actually have some questions on my phone that I specifically want to ask, and I don't want to brush over them. And one of them actually here which is the whole idea of for you, does the narrative write the song for you?
A lot of the time, yeah. Oh God, you can save so much time if you've got a story. So much time. So usually narrative song, it'll be something like you've got action in the verses and you've got the chorus which is summing it up.
Got it.
So that example of the guy who's replacing all his body parts with mechanical alternatives, it's not really got a chorus, it's got a refrain. So verse about how I've taken my eyes out, I've taken my teeth out. Refrain, which unusually for me is a pun. I'm doing the best that I can. I'm a self-made man. And that's summing it up, That's summing up, this is the situation I'm in. So you've got this story, and you've got this, all right, for me, it's this weird, ridiculous story, but you could apply it to the theory holds for more sensible stories. What's my second verse going to be? Now, I don't know how people who don't write story songs do this. If you're not writing a story song, then what's your verse? Have you got to wait until the next horrible thing in your life happens, so you're going to write the diary entry? It'll be verse 2. I don't know how you do that. I can't do that. I don't need to. Story. What's happening next? Okay, well, he must be moving onto his legs, and then he's thinking, right, okay, we'll do that. And then, like I said, the bridge often is where there's the slight twist or there's the decision. So in that particular song, it's verse 1, we're changing some of our body parts. Verse 2, refrain, summing it up. Verse 2, changing more of our body parts. Verse 3, summing it up. Bridge, there's a thing about clean. There used to be a woman who used to be my wife. I've cleaned up all the rust from all the tears she cried. And you realise that, oh, this bastard, this horrible man, what's he done? He's, by removing all his body parts, he's removed all his emotions. for some reason to get out of this marriage. So you've got that sort of reveal of, oh, this is actually more ghastly than I thought. Then we do the chorus again. So like you've got a narrative, you've got a structure. You have to think less about what's going to be in your lyrical content, so you can save a lot of time. And that can happen on a macro level as well, because I whisper it. Sometimes I've been accused of prog rock, and you can go, you're not just verse chorus. You can have bigger structures, and narrative is great for that. And you can repeat. So I've got a set of 5 songs, The Miser's Will, which is all about an old man who doesn't want to lose his money, basically. And there's all sorts of silly sci-fi happenings. 5 songs, but the 5th one is just repeats of stuff from the earlier songs.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So it's just I'll have that idea for the verse, and I'll have the chorus of song 3 for the bridge of song 5. And you know what I'll do in the last section of song 5? I'll take the chorus from song 1, but we'll do it in 4/4 rather than 6/8, and that'll be our song. And that 5th song, I think, is the best song of the 5, and I wrote it in 5 seconds flat because it was just sticking together parts of the previous songs. So you can save so much time.
Have you ever found a situation where you've been writing something and you've stumbled upon something entirely new by complete accident, and that in itself has changed the whole tenor of the song that came before it?
Yes, I have. I mean, but more than that, I deliberately engineer random stuff like that, because I said I'm a Bowie fan, didn't I? So, Bowie is famous for nicking that cut-up technique,
yes,
and then doing sort of more sort of IT versions of it. So, I mean, I've done all sorts of things like this. I have a spreadsheet that I've set up.
Nothing wrong with spreadsheets.
That sentence shouldn't happen, should it? In a conversation about music. I've got a spreadsheet. I've got a spreadsheet set up. It's Google Doc. I can share the link if you want. That is set up to give me a random set of chords. It'll take every time it gets refreshed, it does a random set of chords, random extensions, random key. So I've made use of that. A technique I've had a lot of success with is Google Translate. Do you know the Google Translate trick?
Yes, I do, yeah.
So for anyone who doesn't, Google Translate, if you move stuff from one language to another, will try and work out what the grammar is. So if you give it random words, and there's quite a few random word generators online, give it a chunk of random words, chuck it through several different languages, then back into English, because I speak English, so whatever language you speak, it will have tried to work out what the grammar was, and you'll get a load of sentences that you wouldn't have come up with. The vast majority of it will be complete rubbish, nonsense, you can't use it. But every once in a while you find something that makes you think, and like, oh, that's someone's voice. The most serendipitous one was I found an entire song title, but I didn't even need to change, which was The Engine That Played Through Their Honeymoon, which is on my album 3 Rows of Teeth. And it was just there. I chucked a load of stuff through Google Translate, and in amongst all the dross and nonsense, The Engine That Played Through Their Honeymoon. And the whole story is there. Like you can tell from the title what that song is about, The Engine That Played Through Their Honeymoon. I don't need to tell you anything more about that song, and you can work out what the story is. And my favourite thing this year, for February album writing month, which I encourage every songwriter to do every February, fawm.org. Don't go to .com, it's not safe for work, it's a different thing. fawm.org. Lovely online community as well. Every year for that, I've done it for 13 years, you have to write 14 new songs in the month of February. So this year I asked people who pay attention to me on social media, you got any weird pictures on your phone? Send me a weird picture, I need some inspiration for songs. And I got quite a few, which are currently, there's a load of them printed out and stuck up behind my guitar there. And it was great. I had this situation where I've got a deadline, 14 songs in 28 days. Don't know what I'm going to write about, but I've got these pictures. So what I ended up doing was just, right, I'm looking at that picture and just picked up a pen and started writing, and found what the voice was. And I reckon about half of those pictures, I found what the voice was and whose like story this was a picture out of, and got a song out of it.
That is fascinating. I've never ever thought to write from that kind of visual stimuli before. That's a really interesting technique. The whole idea that you could be writing out a narrative for even sort of an abstract picture you could use to write out a narrative. I mean, should you feel the need? That's really interesting. What brought about that question then to ask?
Desperation. No, actually, no, it wasn't. No, a friend of mine, Graham, who's a photographer. I think he just sent me one. He said, "Here's a picture. Write a song to that." So I thought, all right, I did. And then I thought, that was fun. That meant I didn't have to think as much. But actually, it's not one technique, it's two techniques. One of them is using the picture of stimulus. The other one, which I skirted over, was free writing. So just pick up a pen and start writing. And a very well-known technique, you just start writing. Whatever comes out, comes out. Except with this, I had a particular motive. I was trying to work out what the song was. But it means I've got pages and pages in a notebook where I'm writing stuff like, oh my God, what is this song about? Who is in this picture, or who's front of view of this picture? Just writing nonsense, stream of consciousness, trying to find it. And that's another technique that I've used a lot.
Well, to round this off, I'm going to ask you a question which I'm probably going to ask every single lyricist that I speak to, which is, if you had one or maybe two bits of advice for someone who's just starting out as a lyricist, or who has some kind of interest in writing lyrics, what advice would you give them?
Sing. Lots of lyric writers are singers, but not all of them. I don't mean you need to do it in public. I don't mean you need to be a performer. If that's not you, fair enough. But sing. Lyric writing is not poetry. And I don't say that to in any way denigrate poetry, but they're different things. And to sing a word, you need to think about how it's going to feel in the mouth, what the vowel sound is, in a way that you might not if you're speaking it or reciting it. So sing, even if it's yourself. Rip off other people shamelessly. You're going to do it whether you want to or not, so own it. Expect that it's going to take a very long time to work out what your voice is. I reckon I figured out who I am as a songwriter. I definitely already had my first solo album and a couple of previous projects out in the world before I really thought I know who I am as a songwriter now. So I must have been doing it for 15 years at least, before I started to work out, this is me, this is my style, this is my voice, and abandon all pretensions of fame or necessarily even making a living, and try and get away from that mindset. I mean, if you see a way to do it, go for it, but the music is the aim and the end. It's not a means to earning a living or being famous or any of that stuff. Those are nice to haves. The music is the end. And if it doesn't feel like the end, there's better routes to those other things if that's what you want. The lyrics of the music have to be the thing you want to do.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much once again, Tom, for sticking with me on this through some pretty esoteric subjects, and I'm glad that you were able to riff off some of the questions that were obviously not uncharted territory, which were obviously, I should say, uncharted territory for you. So it is much appreciated. So all that remains to be said is thank you very much for everybody for tuning in. If you like what you see, please go check out Tom Slatter's music. You can find where is your music available, if you can let the people know out there, Tom?
Sure. So you need a Ouija board, and a dead uncle or aunt is best we find, or tomslatter.co.uk. I battle for the top of Google for Tom Slatter with there's an actor called Tom Slatter and a professor in Sheffield Uni, I think, called Tom Slatter. So we fight out for the top of Google. So one of us is at the top of Google. Just Google our name.
So once again, thank you very much, Tom. As I said before, thank you everybody out there for joining us. If you like what you see, please click like and subscribe, and we'll see you around next time. So take care.